Okay, well, welcome to the last session today, which is on matching. We have a set of 6 ranges of results. And the first of them is multiple kernel local patch descriptor, and it's being presented by Arun.
Thank you, Don. My name is Arun Mukundan, and I'm from the Czech Technical University in Prague. Today we'll be presenting our work, which is a descriptor with Yorgos Tolias and Mondragon. So let's get right into it. So let's start with something I'm sure all of you will be familiar with, is how to describe local appearance. So given an image, what we do is we basically detect some key points, then we normalize these to square patches, and finally from these square patches we try to extract our descriptor, which is the vector shown here. And what kind of tasks can this be used in? This can be used in tasks like structure from motion, multi-view stereo, and image retrieval. I'd like to start with, so first, what was the kind of stuff that was being done in the past on this? There are basically 2 schools of thought. One is handcrafted descriptors and one is learned descriptors. So the advantage of handcrafted descriptors are that they're intuitive, they're tweakable, and they require no learning. But the problem is that their performance is really not so good. As compared to the learned descriptors, which nowadays is dominated by convolutional neural network-based methods, for example, deep test, t-feed, deepcon, etc. But because these are end-to-end methods, they need a lot of training data, they need a lot of training time. And if we change the parameters of these models, we're not really sure what's going to happen. So their behavior is quite difficult to interpret. But their performance is really amazing, and handcrafted descriptors cannot even match this performance. So what we want is we want to try to see if we can somehow bring together the best of both worlds. That is, have an intuitive descriptor that has really good performance. So I'll start with something I hope is familiar to all of you, the SIF descriptor. And in this, I guess everybody knows that the first thing we do is we quantize our patch into bins called spatial bins. And in each spatial bin for each pixel, we have a gradient orientation and magnitude. And what we do is we just take those with similar orientations and we put them into a histogram. And similarly, we have a histogram for each of these bins. And when we concatenate them, we get our final descriptor. So this I'm sure everybody knows, but let's try to look at this from a new perspective, which is, what is the contribution of a single pixel to this embedding? So as you can see, as I've shown here, the orange pixel at the left if we try to take the embedding of this pixel, basically what we get is we get a positive value in its spatial bin and orientation and 0 everywhere else. So this is what I call the pixel embedding. And now you can see that this patch embedding is basically just an aggregation of pixel embeddings. Okay, but how does this help us? So this helps us when we try to look at it in terms of patch similarity when we use SIF. So when we use SIF, what we do is we usually just take an inner product of the integers of the 2 patches in question, which means that we multiply corresponding elements. And when we look at these as aggregations of pixel embeddings, you can clearly see what's happening. So the first pixel is going to be compared to every pixel of the second patch, and similarly for the second, the third, and so on. So what I mean to say is that every pixel of patch P is going to be compared to every pixel of patch Q by the simple operation of inner product. And how exactly is this comparison done? It's done using this function k of pq. So this is what we call the kernel. Now, in the case of SIF, let's see what these k's are. So in the case of SIF, the first thing we do is we parameterize the pixel in terms of x, y, and theta, which is why we get spatial bins and orientation bins. So suppose I want to take this red pixel that I've indicated here with the gradient orientation, and I want to compare it to all the pixels in the patch shown. So I can see that in the case of SIF, what I'm going to get for kx is basically just a step function similarly to ky and k theta. And how do we jointly encode these 3 attributes? In the case of SIF, it's a simple product. So let me reiterate, what we have is basically a step function. Now, one extension is quite obvious from here. Instead of having a step function, let's use some continuity so we can get rid of quantization effects, etc. So what we do is we map each 1D attribute to a vector embedding. And the function that we're trying to approximate is a 1 Mises kernel. And the way we approximate it depends on the number of terms we take in the approximation, and this decides the dimensionality of the descriptor. Which means that higher dimensionality means it's a better approximation, like you can see the red, and lower dimensionality means lower approximation, which you can see green. So far we've seen that given a pixel, we need to first first parameterize it in terms of x, y, and theta, and then we jointly encode it. In the case of SIFT, it is step function, and our descriptor, basically we just need to change the functions that we are using into a continuous version, and we get our kernel descriptor. Now, we've seen that if we change this k of pq, then on these parameterizations, we get different kinds of descriptors. But what we want to see is, because the advantage of handcrafted descriptors is that it's supposed to give us some intuition, so we will see how we get this intuition in this case. Now, since I've defined the pixel embedding in this case, now I can also define the similarity between two pixels coming from two different patches, which means that I want to compare the pixel P in patch P to, for example, these three pixels in patch Q. And the way I do it is I simply take the inner product of the pixel embeddings, as I've shown before. And if I do this and just map out this scalar value that I get here, then what I'm going to get is actually a continuous map, which is shown here as 10 isocontours, where the maximum similarity is in red and minimum similarity is in blue. Alright, just to drive home the point, let's see what these patch maps look like for the case of SIFT. So for example, if I have a blue pixel here of the same orientation, then only the pixels in the bin in which this blue pixel is are going to fire. And in case the orientation is does not fall in the same bin, then in fact this pixel is not going to contribute to the score at all, and we're just going to get 0 everywhere. Now we have seen that the parameterization we have seen so far is in terms of x, y, and the gradient orientation. But obviously we can use different kinds of parameterizations, which gives us different behaviors. So for example, in the Cartesian case, we can have x, y, and the absolute gradient. And in the polar case, we can have phi rho, which is radius, and angle from, let's say, horizontal. And in this case, we use something called a relative gradient. Like basically, the reason we use polar coordinates is we want some tolerance to rotational misalignment. And in this case, we are forced to use something called a relative gradient. Let's see what these parameterizations look like. So now, again, the same thing I've done. I've just taken the pixel embedding of in the patch P, which is the patch on top, and on the below is the patch Q. And now I map out these data values, and you can see that the Cartesian looks like this, and the polar looks like this. And in fact, they have some behaviors which are really interesting. Which is, the first thing is that in the polar case, it is tolerant to dominant orientation misalignment. So you can see here that when I am normalizing my patch, suppose I make an error in estimating the dominant orientation, then all these pixels are going to have a slightly different dominant orientation. But you can see that the kernel shifts to compensate for this. Now in the Cartesian case, it is tolerant to translation invariance because we have this nice red patch in the center, which means that the scores are going to be similar even for small displacements translationally. Okay, so we have now two descriptors, polar and Cartesian, each of which has some interesting properties. But they don't really perform so well, and we try to see what's the reason they don't perform so well. So for example, in the polar case, there's a marked discontinuity around the center, which is really not good for such kind of a match kernel. Whereas in the Cartesian case, there is no tolerance to rotational mistakes. So what we want to do is we want to somehow have the best of both worlds. So one simple thing we can do is just concatenate these two descriptors and see what happens. So this is what we have shown here on the right. And we can see that already the bad behavior that we have around the center is kind of elevated. But we can do better. As we saw before, that these completely handcrafted descriptors have a very bad performance, whereas the learned ones, which are data-driven, have a really good performance. So ideally we would want to do that. We would want to have our handcrafted descriptor also driven by data. But we do this in a very, very simple manner. It's just a linear transform called linear discriminant projection. Now the advantage of this method is that it's very fast to learn, works with very few training samples, and it automatically finds the optimal mixing coefficients in the case of this concatenation. Well, to explain it simply, basically what I'm saying is that no matter how you stretch or squeeze the ellipsis on top, it's always going to go to a circle. Alright, so now let's we need some intuition, so let's see what this learning actually does. So in the absence of learning, the two descriptors that we have concatenated are shift invariant with respect to the gradient orientation, which means that even if the absolute orientation changes, the patch is not going, the kernel is not going to change. But what happens once we've used our learning? So we find something really, really interesting. Is that, okay, we already know that it should probably not be shift invariant anymore, but this is a very special kind of shift invariant. And as you can see, what's happening is that the kernel is aligning itself to the orientation of this gradient. So I'm just going to zoom through this for a bit. And I hope you guys can see that this is indeed what is happening, is that the kernel is aligning itself to the orientation of the gradient. So what does this mean? So this basically means that, let's say if I have two patches, patch P and patch Q, and a black pixel in patch P indicated with a black arrow, and it's lying on this edge. Now, when we try to compare these two, if we use the normal match kernel, it's going to count every pixel against every pixel of these two edges, which means that it's probably overcounting. But in the case of the learned kernel, because the shape of the kernel is like this, firstly it's going to prevent this overcounting, and secondly it gives us a little tolerance of translation in the direction, perpendicular direction of the edge. But okay, these are our interpretations, but we still don't know if these are really good properties for descriptors. So the way we test that is by testing on real data sets. So we actually have two very famous data sets, and they're actually 10 years apart, which means that most of the work was done on a data set that was collected 10 years ago. But anyways, so the first data set is phototourism, and in this there was only one task defined, which is verification, which means that given two patches, we want to see if they detect the same 3D point. And for this, the metric we are using is false positive rate at 95%. Now, this is an old data set, so they had only this DOG detectors. And we can see that our descriptor, marked as PCW for polar Cartesian whitening, actually performs the best. And these other descriptors that I've shown above are all convolutional neural network based descriptors. So basically, they take a lot of time to train, and they take a lot of training data. Like the training data is in the amount of millions of pairs of supervision, whereas for our method, it's in thousands. Like it should be comparable to the dimension of the descriptor, essentially. Now, the second data set that we have is called H patches, and it was introduced just this year. And the three tasks that are defined on this are verification, matching, and retrieval. The metric used is mean average precision, and in this case now we have a variety of detectors as well. And okay, so one thing I would like to point out here is that we have two PCWs here. One is green and one is red, and one has a star, one doesn't. So the ones which have a star and a plus are those that have learned their whitening on part of H patches, and the one in green actually is the descriptor which we got from phototourism, which we just directly validated here. So this goes to say that even though we train on a different data set, this thing is still generalizing. And when we see, when we train on H patches, obviously, not obviously, but it turns out to be best. So I would like to conclude here with saying that I've introduced a new descriptor, which is extremely fast to train, extremely intuitive, and yeah, it brings together the best of both worlds between handcrafted and learned descriptors. So we really don't need a really complex function to estimate the similarity in this case. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a comment and a question. Okay. So the comment is, you started off by saying that there are two options. Yes, there are two options. One is learning, and one is handcrafting. So it turns out that we can have a third option, which is analysis. Sometimes you can compute ahead of time by analysis. It turns out that for feature descriptors, there is one paper that did that, and it came out last year. I think from Stefano Santo's group. They thought, the question was, what's the best local descriptor? Is invariant with respect to viewpoint, occlusion, and I think scale, and lighting changes, and they were able to compute it through. So I didn't go through the calculations, I don't know, but it's there. And they claim that it comes out almost identical to David Lowe's descriptors, with one change which is integrating not only over space variability, but also over scale variability. So they add there's one more line in the contract code, and they say it works 4 times better than SIG. I think it's, so the question is, did you compare to that option?
If you could tell me the name, perhaps.
Yeah, so the senior author is Stefano Soatto, S-O-A-T-T-O, and it came out, I think, CVPR last year.
Is it LIP?
Sorry?
Is it called LIP?
It could be, yeah, forget it.
I think DSPC.
Okay. Yeah.
DSPC? Okay, no, I don't think so then.
Okay.
I mean, like, these are really weird names, so I'm not certain even if I have compared or